Welcome to Miami Beach Urban Studios live art talk with Michelle, Lisa Polissaint. It's great seeing everyone here tonight. My name is Colette Mello and I'll be moderating today's conversation with Michelle. This event is being recorded, so please take this opportunity to turn off your video if you do not want to be recorded. FIU Miami Beach Urban Studios, known as MBUS, is an incubator for the arts, architecture, music, design, and communication. I'd like to thank Miami Beach Department of Tourism and Office of Cultural Affairs for sponsoring these talks and for their continued support during these difficult times. The format of this art talk will start with Michelle giving a presentation about her work, and then we will have a conversation that will be open to questions through the chat function. Michelle Lisa Polissaint is an FIU BFA graduate and is a Miami-based artist. Her creative practice intersects activism, community, and curation. Her work ranges from fibers to performance to photography. Her subject matters have included gentrification, identity, relationships, and immigration. In 2018, she won an Ellie Award for the project Moonshine Monin. Michelle's most recent work, Ruining Love Songs, was exhibited at the Art and Cultural Center of Hollywood. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for joining us. I'll hand over the screen to you now.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Lisa Polissaint, as Colette said, and I'm a visual artist and arts organizer based in Miami. I mean, she kind of already said that. So I want this conversation to focus on a lot of the work that I've been doing that more specifically engages community and work that I'm using that's kind of experimenting with my photographic background. As she said, I have a BFA from FIU. My focus at FIU was fiber-based painting and photography. And I've, in my more recent years, have finally started to incorporate those two. So I'm going to talk about just all the ways in which my work has kind of progressed, really more so since FIU. So for those of you who came for the photo heavy work, I'm very sorry. I'm not going to focus so much on that work, but I am going to talk about a lot of what I've been doing for those who may have never seen some of that stuff. But before I get to that, I wanted to kind of take this opportunity to talk a bit about just like the current moment that we're in, because I don't think it would be conducive to me to not do that. So I'm gonna share. Before I get to that, I wanted to, hello. So this is also like my Instagram handle, website, in case you're interested in following me in that way. Black Lives Matter is a movement that's clearly happening in our nation at the moment. And I think that as someone who is one Black and a woman and queer and just living with a lot of different intersections of a marginalized experience, I think it's important for me to make a point, like to talk about some of that and to not avoid it. So I think that it's important to acknowledge that the Miami community, although looks very different than the national American community, we haven't really, sorry. Butter. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. A mango fell off of my roof and my dog
said,
Butter, come here. I don't think we have, as a community, have really combated what white supremacy looks like in our community. And I think that instead of trying to act like Miami's so different, Miami's not like the rest of the United States, we have to really acknowledge what exists today in Miami that makes it so that issues of white supremacy are still pretty ingrained in our structure. And I think institutions and artists have an opportunity right now to be very open and ask questions of the community organizers and the people who are working directly with these issues, rather than sending out all these like kind of vague statements or just creating these very open-ended responses. This is a moment to really take action and really look back at your history, the way that you haven't really thought about or cared or given enough energy and care to issues related to racism as it relates to Black people and as it relates to people of color, immigrants, issues of transphobia. I mean, there's a whole list of issues that I think that people kind of sweep under the rug kind of regularly. And I really wanted to start with that because I think a lot of times when Black artists are invited to do these kinds of talks, whether we talk about this or not, those are the questions that we get because people treat it as an opportunity to ask those questions. But I don't really want that to be what the Q&A is focused on. So I wanted to just kind of say, this is what I feel about it. There's a lot of community organizations that you can reach out to learn more before you send out statements and before you create programs. I think a lot of institutions and artists will make program around issues rather than like directly combat the issues. And that's not what we need right now. So I just implore you to research and reach out to as many spaces and organizations that you can to learn more before you move forward at all. So that said, we're gonna get to the bulk of what this conversation really is about for me, which is my practice. So the first thing I wanted to talk about in my practice is this project I did called Ensemble. And I think the reason I want to start there is because Ensemble was where I really started to focus on how I can make community-based engagement integral to my practice as an artist and not just this thing that might happen or could happen. So in this opportunity, in this kind of roundabout way, I ended up meeting Naja Moon from the Black family. And she and I started talking about what we wanted to do with our work and what she does, what I do. And I had already been given an opportunity to have a paid version of this dinner that I wanted to host. And so that ended up kind of progressing into a collaborative dinner between me and the Black family. The Black family is a collective of artists who create community-based engagements around food. So there's been events like just like a seated dinner. And there's events that are kind of tastings. There was an event that they used to do with cocktails where they would have different cocktails. And the point was less of like trying to tell people what to do, but to just get a bunch of people in the same room together. And with this dinner, I specifically wanted to get artists, organizers, arts administrators, and into one room together. And the nice thing about this event was that I knew that there were certain people in the room that were going to gravitate to each other and that were going to start collaborations, that were going to create new relationships, and that really ended up happening, which was really great. So I'm gonna play this video, just a part of it.
I got it, just wake up.
Yes, good evening. The first course is a tribute to my grandmother. So my grandmother was Dominican, and she migrated and went to Suriname, where she learned Indonesian cuisine, and then opened a restaurant in Luba in the 60s, 70s with Dominican/Indonesian food. So the first dish you have is mofongo, and today I'm going to take you guys through the African experience of the diaspora.
Yeah, so that was one of the first projects I did with the Black family. That this one particularly happened in 2017. So it's been a while since that happened, but that was the first of many projects I ended up doing with them, which either like in collaboration or opportunities I've had to present their work. And I'll talk about one more of those in this talk as well. So like kind of moving forward, I also wanted to talk a bit about just how I've incorporated arts administration into my practice and as an artist, and also as an advocate for artists. And so I'm going to talk a bit about my experience when I worked at Locust Projects. And I wanted to talk about Locust Projects specifically because it's somewhere that I spent the most time doing this kind of work, which was centering artists and what they wanted to produce and what they wanted to show, how they wanted to work. And the project that really allowed us to do that was the Research and Development Mobile Studio. And we launched that in 2018 as an opportunity to amplify specifically our like resource building for artists. That was something that was coming up a lot, and recognizing that artists didn't really have like as much studio time or opportunities to play with making work that wasn't centered around the art market. So the first, I'm going to talk about the ones that I actually curated. And so the first was, we had Art Stop Black come to Miami. Art Stop Black is a collective of, is two artists, two arts writers, and they focus on art criticism from Black perspectives, which as much as I don't want to act like it's like so different, it really is. The perspective of somebody who's from a completely different experience from you may be very necessary to the way that very necessary in a critical sense, because they might bring up comments and thoughts that you may not expect. And so the two in the image on the left is Jessica Lynn. She hosted a talk where she talked about her work while also centering the work of Fannie Lou Hamer. And then the books on the table, they curated a list of books that they invited the public to flip through. And then the sections that they really wanted people to have, they made copies of and kept those there. And then on the right is images of the space that Taylor left behind, who is Jessica's collaborator on Art Stop Black. And Taylor focused specifically on some threads that she was working in with Jennifer Harge, who's a dancer in Detroit. And then we have Jamila Sabor. Jamila Sabor took this opportunity to, one, curate a show of work from artists from a university in St. Augustine. She specifically was interested in this connection she had to saint cities. So she had done different projects in different cities that were named after saints. So it was St. Augustine, Sao Paulo, and San Francisco. So all three of those cities kind of had placed a specific kind of emphasis into this project. In the center is an image of her and Dana Washington, very dark because it's backlit, of course, but her and Dana Washington talking about a film that she screened with us. And then on the right, we have Jamila just in the studio hanging out. We also bought a Polaroid camera and had them like play with that in the studio as well. And then we had, why does it keep doing this? Then we had Angel Garcia. She created a space where she focused on mysticism and researching mysticism in her own practice and how it exists in contemporary art. And part of that project included her inviting the community. She was the one, I think, who really integrated the community the most heavily into her space. She invited the community to help her create an oracle deck. An oracle deck is supposed to be an intuitive deck, tarot deck that forgive me if you're a mystic person in here, because I don't know that much, but it's an intuitive tarot deck essentially. And she focused a lot on the color Haint Blue and how it relates to the spiritual world. And it's kind of like a color that's used for like warding off certain things as well. So then another project I got to do was I got to invite the Black family back to Locust. They had done a couple of projects there where they just presented performances, but we were curious of how they would work, one with like a bigger budget and two with an art fair, and like what would they want to do there. And so they curated this 3-part performance. And I really I really enjoyed this particular experience because it was really having them push the practice that they had been working on for a long time to something just beyond what they typically do. So this is a 3-part performance that they created with Samora Pinder-Hughes, who's pictured here, Aja Monet, and Cartier Williams. So I'll play that video here. Aja Monet is a poet, Cartier Williams is a tap dancer, and Samora Pinder-Hughes is a pianist.
We are years of the sun loving us. Solitude is the risk of a magnolia tree, hung or lynched in a rose-throated croon of liberty and justice for all. Except blues people live in the smoke at a crossroads. What really happened that day, Robert Johnson brought his guitar to meet an evil of all hues. Play with magic and be ready for it to play with you. Some folks fear death, others know better. Fear the devil, don't sell no soul to spite dying. We all have to go someday or another. Death is a family member you hear of but never meet until y'all meet. And some things is meant for telling.
So it ended so abruptly. So yeah, that's a video of that performance. And I thought it was important to share that one because I think that as an administrator, it was something that really kind of sparked a particular kind of excitement for me to see them do this performance. So I did a lot of other programs, but those were the ones that I really wanted to highlight because they really gave not only me an opportunity to help artists create space for themselves, but it also allowed me to give artists a space to work with a staff and a budget, which is very exciting. So in the year 2019, I took a break from working full-time. I've worked full-time pretty much most of my life. And except for the tiny break I took when I moved to Miami and was looking for work. But for the most part, I've worked full-time in some capacity, either overlapping different positions or at one job or institution. So I decided to take a break. I had been invited to apply for a residency at Elsewhere Museum in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I got that opportunity. So I was like, let me just take advantage. And so I left my position at Locust Projects to do that. I then went to home and away residency. And then from there, I went to Mexico and Haiti, just because I could, and it was the first time I was able to do that. But in that time, I was able to work on so many other aspects of my creative practice that really pushed my practice a little bit further. And specifically, I'm thinking of the umbrellas that I got to produce with my collaborator. So we lived on 59th and Northeast First Court in Little Haiti. And as we were sitting there one day on a rainy day, kind of like this particularly rainy day, in our living room, we looked out the window and just noticed that there were just people, so many people, person after person passing by with blue design district umbrellas. And anyone who is familiar with the issue of gentrification in Little Haiti at the moment, or the issue of gentrification in general, you kind of probably have an idea of why that's a problem. A neighborhood that's being pushed out by the design district has their citizens are carrying around umbrellas that are advertised in the design district. These are marketing tools. They're not as much as the design district I know wants to treat it as just a gift to people because it rains here. It is a marketing tool that's being used. And so seeing it kind of trickle into Little Haiti felt very insidious and made us pretty uncomfortable. So in that moment, we decided to make umbrellas for Little Haiti. And it was kind of this I will say it was kind of a whim, but also just it felt like a culmination of so many conversations that we had been having over the last year or so. So And then I remember Naja asked me if there was any Haitian parables I can think of that might relate to this project. And I found one, and that says, "Caille coule trompe soleil, mais il pas trompe la pluie," which means a leaky roof fools the sun, but it doesn't fool the rain. And I thought it was such a perfect metaphor for gentrification. And I'll read a bit of that statement about like how we relate to that. And so, where is it? No. And it says, attempting to repair a leaky roof while it rains is as futile a task as sweeping a home with muddy shoes on. Here the roof is local government, the rain is rapid gentrification, the crack is capitalism, and beneath all of this are residents of Little Haiti fighting to keep up with the downpour. So we ended up applying to the Oh Miami Poetry Festival with the umbrellas, and Oh Miami picked it up. And we ended up making 1,000 umbrellas and distributing them over the course of the the last year. It was supposed to just be April, but I don't think we expected it to take this long to distribute 1,000 umbrellas, but I guess it makes sense. And so I'll play this video as well this time. We're distributing them, kind of like popping them up in people's houses, handing them to people, and then to document that, we're photographing them. And so in some of the ways we're like popping them up kind of so that they're just like this surprise, like when you open the door, it's just this big red thing sitting there. And in others, we're like handing them directly to community members. Oh no. It's kind of nice to also meet some of the community members we've never met.
Sure. They know me from school, Pine Lake Elementary, Carway Elementary, Lincoln Swamp.
And then hi, Michelle.
Nice to meet you, Michelle.
Sometimes people assume that these communities that are underserved don't really understand the politics or the dynamics of what's happening. But very quickly, people are talking about what they don't like about Magic City Innovation District, what they don't like about the Design District, how they understand the correlations to Haiti and this community, like learning a lot about Miami history and Haitian history, a lot of just amazing conversations.
But only one thing just blew my heart, because I saw my people, they stay here no more. They don't stay here no more. I remember when I was still coming, when I used to be 21 years old. All here is Haitian people. When you be hungry, you got food for $3. You got food for $5. They're going to give you food for free. They are that good nation.
It's something that I really love about living here. I've been living here for almost 5 years, is that you walk outside and people say hello. And this object has given an opportunity to kind of extend that conversation beyond just a greeting. Even though it's an incredibly friendly and beautiful place, this is like another layer in how we can connect with our neighbors.
Stay out of the rain. Oh, that's your shirt. Yeah, that's it. Okay, thank you so much. So with this project, we really wanted to also incorporate my photography because we wanted to kind of have a say in the documentation of the project. So here's a few images of different times we went out distributing umbrellas. We did it so many times that, I mean, it got to the point where whenever it rained, we just like run outside and just start like driving around the neighborhood and dropping off umbrellas to people, or like we'd see people on the street with no umbrella and we just hand them one through the car window, or like we just walk around in the rain. And this was one of those days as well. Or like we would do this where we would just drop them off at the doors of people in different little apartment complexes around the neighborhood. Or we did this one too, that one was pretty cute. And it was just like a really nice moment to have with our community. Even when we didn't actually get to see people directly, it did still feel really nice to drop them off and leave them there. Because umbrellas are necessary, they are. And it just gave us a lot of really great engagements. We had one particular night where we went by a house and we were like, do you want umbrellas? And they said, yeah. And they said, do you want beer? And so we sat there and played dominoes and drank beer after dropping off umbrellas. And it was like late at night at this point. It was like almost 9 o'clock at this point. So the next project I'll talk about is a more photographic centered project, which is the Ballad of Me and You. When I was in college, I did this mock-up of a photograph where I started to sew on top of it. And I didn't really know if I would ever do anything with it. I just started playing with it. And so years later, I was going through the stack of things in my studio, and I saw this little mock-up. It was like this tiny little like 8 by 8 print. And so I got this idea. I was like, let's look up all the ways to print on fabric. Let's see how that works. And so I ended up doing this exhibition called Collectivity at Bakehouse and printing, I think for that one, I ended up doing 5 or 6 of these where I printed my photographs or different graphic imagery onto fabric. And this series is more of a more personal series. It's centered around my relationships that I've had in the past or haven't had in the past. And it's different conversations, different experiences that I've had. And then I print them on fabric and then I embroider on top of them. So what you'll see in the next coming images are more detailed images of them. So I know on this, it just looks like photographs printed in a different way. But if you look closer, there's embroidery on all of the pieces. And there are really kind of these meditations for me on past experiences, past experiences. So they allow me to kind of think back to that moment and think about what it is about that didn't work out. And I think that I'm one of those people who thinks about romance and love a lot. And so this project was kind of a really great moment for me to do that. I don't think it's the most healthy thing sometimes to think about love this much, but it is something that I do think about a lot. Like in this conversation, I'm like, it's like an actual conversation I had where somebody said, I love you to me. And I said, okay. And in retrospect, I think about how I made that person feel. Like this particular piece allowed me to kind of like take a moment to be at peace with myself for kind of being kind of hurtful in that moment. And then this is one of the pieces installed at Supplement Projects. The first 2 images were from Bakehouse, but this one is at Supplement Projects. And at Supplement Projects, we played with it a little bit more. And this piece was printed on silk charmeuse. So we were like, maybe we should attach it to a curtain and see how it looks with light coming through the window, which I thought was quite beautiful. And I really like that they're printed on fabric because not only because I can sew on it, but also because of how it allows the wind and like whatever elements might be in the room to kind of move the work as well. You can walk around it, you can walk under it because of how they're hung. And I just really enjoy that. And so I'm gonna close with this video, which is an untitled project that is still kind of in progress. And the reason I'm closing with this one is actually kind of, because the video relates to the last project, which is about love. And this video is about like friendship and friend love and how that is where I've been prioritizing my energy, is with the care with the friends that I have around me. And so I really wanted to make this video, but then COVID happened and now nobody can touch each other. So this is like still kind of in progress and just kind of this shell of a final project that will one day be a thing, but right now it's just not there yet. But I did want to share it. And then it includes lyrics to songs. Like I have this playlist called Ruined Love Songs in my phone that is a bunch of songs that, like, because of the relationship I have to it, because of a person or an experience, I can't listen to it without thinking about that thing. And I kind of hate that. Like I'm not one of those people who's as nostalgic about it. It just frustrates me that like I can't just listen to the song that I like for that reason. And I thought I liked the idea of applying it to this video that's more about the people in my life who are my friends, because I think that there's something really important about both of those types of relationships. And that is what I've been doing for the last few years.
Thank you. That was wonderful. It's so great to learn more about your work. We've only met a couple times at different exhibitions, so we don't know each other that well. So that was really nice to see that. So I want to open it up to questions. If anyone has a question they'd like to ask Michelle, you can send it through the chat. Let me see what we have. You have a lot of people on Facebook saying hello, so they wanted to tell you that. One of the things I find about your work, Michelle, I find it very intimate. I feel like even though I don't know you very well, when I see your work, I feel like it's very heartfelt and that I know you and I know what's important to you. Is that your intention, or what is your intention with your work?
I think my intention, I know my intention with my work is to just be honest about what I'm experiencing, about what I care about, and being vulnerable and open as much as difficult as that may be. So I'm not really I try not to center it around like anything other than just honesty. So it's really just about what's going on in the moment, especially like with my photographic practice, very much with that too.
I have a question. They're asking about, as a photographer, are there differences between your videos and your photography works?
Well, I would say that there's only video. There's only one really. And not to say that I won't make more of them in the future. I just think that for now, it's only been like a first foray into producing video. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a difference in the sense that like digital, I shoot more film with photography, and with video, I've only shot digitally. And so it is a completely different practice to be able to shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot without really running out of space, in the way that like I shoot medium format, which means you get even less images. And in comparison with digital, there's just like this kind of unlimited opportunity to produce. You also have there's like, it's just different. It's like the energy is different, but like for the most part, I don't think that I consider myself like a video artist or anything like that as of yet. I just kind of like have been dipping my toes, into that.
I see. I have a question. Someone is asking, did you make the embroidery on the sewing machine or by hand?
So it's a sewing machine. Shout out to Pip Brandt, she's here. She taught me how to do free motion sewing when I was in college. And essentially you drop the little teeth that hold the fabric in place. And so you can actually just move the machine like around. So it gives you a little bit more space to just keep going. You do have to be careful with it, but hold on, sorry. Hey, what are you doing? But yeah, so it is with the sewing machine. Some of it's by hand, like some of the more like just like small text related things are by hand, but I'm assuming you're talking about some of the more intricate pieces, those are by machine.
Okay, I have one more. Let's see what this other question. I know you said COVID is putting a pause on what you expected on the work, but how do you think it is changing right now?
Changing the work, or?
I'm not sure what they mean. It says, I know you said COVID is putting a pause on what you expected on the work, but how do you think it is changing right now?
I mean, I haven't been producing as much, so I don't know if my work is changing as much as it's on a pause. To be frank, like COVID has put this kind of fog around me. And then also it's, when you're dealing with like not only like a global pandemic and like personal health issues and just like, layers of things at one time. So I've just been put on pause, which has been fine. I'm kind of allowing myself the space to not feel so guilty about it now. Not as bad as like in the beginning, I was feeling really guilty because I felt like I wasn't being productive. And then people, friends around me have been like, it's a pandemic. Like, it's a pandemic, like this is like unprecedented, not unprecedented, but this isn't like a typical, like, it's not like you're just on like summer vacation and you're not working and being productive.
Right.
People are sick and dying.
Right. And they did say it was about the work. I have another question here. How do you balance your work, everyday life with making art and not let it take over?
I'm not the right person to ask this question because and like, to be very frank, like I just work and work and work. I have gone to bed. I go to bed at like 3 or 4 in the morning regularly. I know, like, it's not good. Like, it's not, there is no balance for me yet. Maybe one day, like, I mean, I have to eventually find a balance. But I like to pretend that I'm one of those people who like can live off of 4 hours of sleep, even though I know that's not true. But yeah, I don't know. It's as much as I wish that I was one of those balanced people who has like a schedule and like uses a sauna regularly and like is like, I use a Google Calendar. Like that's the one thing. Like if I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't have even showed up for this. Cause like,
Oh, I would have reminded you.
well, yeah, but that's the thing is like, I find there's been like important meetings where someone's like texting me like, hey, are you showing up for this thing? And it's like 5 minutes before the meeting and I'm like rushing there because I've forgotten. But yeah, it's like mostly just like using a Google Calendar and not sleeping and drinking a lot of coffee. And so like, don't do that. Like, don't be like,
You don't have balance. You're saying you don't have balance.
no, sorry. I wish I could have an answer.
The idea of embroidery on photographs, how and when did you decide to do that? And I understand that you took Pip and Peggy's classes. What's important to you about the two art practices?
Of Pip and Peggy?
Well,
Or-
I guess your photography and your fiber, like you've got these two practices that you've married together.
So, okay, so like the first question, I started thinking about doing it in college, but I didn't actually actively do it. I just kind of sewed by hand onto like photographs. And then when I became older and had more money to like pay for certain production stuff, I was like, oh, I can print it directly onto fabric so that it would be just as vibrant, but also like, you know, it's paper. So paper is really sensitive and maybe that there is something to that, like there's some way that might work, but for me in this project, it didn't make sense. And then I think the most important thing to me about fibers is like one, like craft and like more craft based practices aren't frowned upon, but they're like kind of placed in like a different category of work. And I don't think that's one fair and two, I don't think it really makes sense because I think they all kind of align together. I also think that I am glad that I learned how to sew because I think for sustainability purposes and for like the earth, we should be kind of producing more things on our own or learning how to fix things on our own. And so incorporating it to my artistic practice is this thing that kind of allows me to play with this very like utilitarian thing. But photography, I think is really important in the sense that I think that it's just important to have opportunities to document the world around us because things are changing so quickly. There's not really any room to, you know, there's no buffer space to remembering. You kind of, things just disappear. I think about a lot, like there was this like particular cafe I remember going to in downtown Miami when I first moved here. And I think I went there for like 3 months and like one day it was just gone, you know, and there's like a whole different building there. Or, you know, I was driving through Wynwood the other day and like, there's a building that was knocked over and like me or my friend who's in the car with me, neither of us could remember what building was there, you know? And I think with this, like the rapidly changing world and the way capitalism functions, everything needs to change all the time. You don't really have the room to forget. But I guess I'm reckoning with, as an artist who came up in a program where we kind of just like shoot, be out in the world, shoot as much as you can. I'm shooting less on the street and less of people I don't know, particularly just thinking about like how people have been exploited with their photographs. Like images of themselves have been exploited without their permission. And so I kind of avoid photographing people I don't know as much as possible now in the way that I didn't before when I used to just shoot on the street because I'm trying to make myself a little bit more conscious about those issues.
We have another question. What or who inspired you the most to keep creating after graduating from FIU?
Probably my parents. They, you know, they're immigrants from Haiti and they really just wanted to see me be successful. But I think that artist was not the thing that they expected. But I think that once they realized that I was really dedicated to it, they were just like willing to do anything they could to help me work. And so like my mom bought me my first DSLR when I was in high school. And every time not every time, but for a while when I needed to upgrade, they would help me pay for upgrades and stuff like that. My parents also bought me my first film camera and just have supported the desire to make art. My first trip back to Haiti that spawned a series of photographs that I'm still kind of working on off and on called If Home Was Home, were produced when I was on a trip to Haiti for a month, right, like immediately after graduation. That's what I did, is I left Miami and I just went to Haiti with my parents for a month. And that particular trip kind of spawned this like traveling back and forth to Haiti, like at least twice a year since then, except for now because of COVID, of course. But and that series has really grown from being able to be in Haiti. So definitely my parents.
I have one more question. You're an activist. Do you find it difficult to combine art and activism? Do you feel that when you make art, you should be more of an activist and vice versa?
Who said that?
Angela Rinhofer and Helica. Sorry. And Helica.
So I don't actually identify myself as an activist. I think that that's like this like kind of brush that's painted over people who speak about things, or like especially Black people, people of color, and like marginalized people. When we decide to like talk about our experiences, people are like, oh, you're an activist. But I don't really identify as an activist, but I think that social practice, social issues are integral to the contemporary art world. I don't think that art exists without those issues. I think that anyone who tries to act like art isn't some way political is like lying to themselves. I think that any photograph can become very political. Thinking about like Afghan Girl, very political, that this white man was able to photograph this girl, make his entire career off of it. And was still poor in Afghanistan the last that they checked in on her, right? Very political, despite it just being a picture, right? So I don't identify as an activist. And I also implore people to kind of research a little bit more about what they mean when they say activist, because sometimes I'm just talking, you know? And people are like activists, you know? But I do understand why people might think that. I actually decided to Google the word activist the other day, and I saw that like up since 2005 or something, it's skyrocketed in its frequency of use on the internet or in the world. And I think part of that has to do with this kind of relationship people have to this word, and thinking that it's kind of this like accomplishment to be considered an activist, when it's really more so of, it's a job, you know? I have friends who are organizers and in movement who it's their full-time job to work in a bunch of different arenas towards making people's lives better. So I don't call myself an activist, because although I do advocate for artists and I do things, I don't think what I'm doing is the same as other people are doing.
I called you an activist, by the way, in your intro. I apologize. So let me, I did call you an activist. There is another question here. Do you do self-portraits?
I do. I didn't want to talk about those because I did them when I was in college at FIU, and I haven't been making them anymore. But I did. They're on my website. If you go to michellelisap.com, they're there. And it was a series of self-portraits that kind of spawned off of me moving out of my parents' house for the first time at like 19, when I decided to move to Miami, and I moved here full time. Like I got an apartment with my friend, and I made my life full-time in Miami immediately. So I had a lot of difficulty with like, oh wow, I'm an adult, I have to make my own decisions now, and like all of this. So then that's where the self-portrait series came from. But they're on the website if you want.
Okay, well, I have one more question, and it's from me. And I just wanted to ask, since your BFA work, and maybe that was your self-portraits, I was wondering how you think your work has evolved since then to now.
My work was more photo heavy at the time. And I think that now my work is allowing me to think way more about community and what impact my work will have on the people I care about. And by that, I mean, like, I care about pretty much a large majority of marginalized people in the world. You know, like that's not also a weird way to phrase that. I care about everyone in the world, and I want to see people's lives change. I want to see a new system in our world, and I think that my work is more focused on those different things now, more than just like me photographing my family, me photographing myself, me photographing my friends. Although I still do that stuff because it is really beautiful to me to share those types of moments with people. But it's definitely changed a lot. I mean, aesthetically, it's changed a lot. I think I've also like gotten better at like color balancing, you know, like technical things I've gotten better at. I've gotten better at free motion sewing. I've been given so many opportunities to progress with my work. Like I've gotten to do residencies, I've gotten grants, I've gotten like a studio at Bakehouse. And so I have all these things now that I didn't have in college that allow me the space to work. Like I'm able to have like my house and a workspace, which is really, really important, I think, for my practice personally. There's some people who like to work at home, but I can't. So I definitely think it's changed in just because I've been able to have way more space to do what I want. But that space has allowed me to build up a lot of skills. I can do things way faster now than I used to be able to do. I also like got myself a scanner because I didn't want to work in the darkroom anymore for health reasons. So I'm like pretty good, you know? Yeah.
So I want to go ahead and I'm going to unmute everyone so everybody can give you some virtual applause. Thank you so much for a great talk, insightful talk. And also I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone. Let me see if I can do that. Hold on. Hopefully, let's see.
I think everyone has to individually unmute themselves after you unmute them. I think that's what.
Okay, so we just did that. If you'd like to say hello or any greetings to Michelle, feel free and give Michelle a round of applause. Thank you so much again for joining us. It was so great to have you and to get to know you. And then I'm also going to thank you. Greetings to Michelle, feel free. I'm going to also go ahead and open up our poll that I always ask everyone to fill out. How you and to get to know you. And then I'm also going to thank you.
Someone has an echo.
I know that was. I'm going to also go ahead and.
Okay.
I don't know. So I went ahead and added a poll, everyone. So we have another art talk next week. Please join us for that with Ahara de Rios. Again, Michelle, thank you so much. I hope that we can see each other face to face. I don't know when that will be, but hopefully soon. And maybe we can organize an exhibition here. That would be great.
Yeah, that'd be really awesome.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.